Okay, let's call the meeting to order. I know Mr. Huffs will be here shortly. He's behind a bunch of school buses also. So, there comes a couple more coming in. So let's go ahead and start with our roll call. And do you have a list of them there?
You know what? I can pull it up.
I apologize, I think they All right, let's start with the board members. Teresa Messers.
Here.
John Reiner. Carl Kaminsky.
Present.
Larry Smith.
Here.
Tracy Van Bergen.
Here.
I'm here. Do we have Mark here?
Okay, we'll put the village carry.
Okay, Mark's here. Got Abigail here for Crystal Lake. McHenry, we got Ross. And Spring Grove.
Mike Fair.
Mike.
Here.
Village of Huntley, I know Mr. Huft is on his way, so we'll put him in when he gets there. Woodstock, Chris?
Chris.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. And do I have a motion to approve the minutes of this meeting? Teresa Meshes, Carl Kaminsky seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any public comment? I didn't see a list.
John wanted to, I don't know if he's on or not, but to zoom in.
Did you got John on there?
John Reiner.
John Reiner?
I mean, he has not,
Oh, there he is, he's called.
I called him, he has not joined. Looks like he's online. So I'm trying to, I think we have.
John Reiner has just joined.
Okay, you have a motion for John Reiner to enter the meeting. Carl Kaminsky moves, Larry Smith seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
John?
You're muted, John, FYI. Your microphone.
All right, that's,
Good morning.
There we go.
I'll put my mute back on until I'm asked.
okay. Did we have any public comment?
No.
No. Any member comments? We'll do that later. Okay, let's move down right into our interviews. First interview we have is Joy. Come on.
You guys can come, Joanna. You guys can come.
Alternate on
I've got a
there is
couple of
Joanna.
chairs.
I know, right? Palm trees.
Look at that palm tree.
Rub it in. Rubbing it in. Johnny.
You start by drinking a tiki drink or something like that. Thank
It's
you.
coffee, I promise.
Okay, Joy, welcome.
Greetings.
Joanna,
Hi there.
why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves and why you want to be on this commission, tech committee?
So I've actually been on the McHenry County Technical Advisory Committee since 2009 through my employment with Black Engineering. Integral in a lot of the discussions coming out of your ordinance revisions, working with some of the concepts on your runoff volume reduction, infiltration. So I've been intimately involved in the history of both the direction and recommendations of TAC as well as some of the information we've been providing the commission. Joanna actually started with Grafe upon leaving McHenry County, and I started employment there 4 months or so after. I'm out of the Milwaukee office but live in Silver Lake shortly over the border. Joanna is out of the O'Hare office as well, but our work envelope encompasses northeastern Illinois, included and into Wisconsin. I feel strongly about ordinance language and recommendations that are written to serve public and private interests. There needs to be a really good balance. So it can't be overly environmental where it's burdensome and prohibits development, and it also can't lean too far toward the development where it hinders the goals of public safety and environmental concerns. And so I am very passionate about being involved at the technical advisory committee level to help guide language that meets both of those goals.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, we'll entertain questions. Larry
Yeah,
Smith.
when you first started, I didn't catch, you've been a member since 2009 because you've been employed with who? And then
I was with Black Engineering, they're out of Lake Forest.
Black?
Black, BLECK. I was employed with them for 20 years. So I was with Lake County Stormwater as their permit engineer for 5 years. And then I left in 2001 and started employment with Black and I was with them for about 20 years.
Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else with a question? Tracy?
So McHenry County is pretty diverse in its land uses. How do you, I guess, what is your opinion on how to accommodate for the differences in the many different land uses?
I think a good example, and we've seen it through some of the other discussions, is, for instance, the Farm Bureau's had a seat at the table and trying to, we may have different memorandums of understanding on dealing with certain agricultural aspects because one size doesn't always fit all. And that discussion has to occur with the parties. So there may not be the same answer for all land use types. There may have to be some different regulations. For instance, a pole barn needs to go up on an agricultural land that is 100 acres and their runoff is going to be going across 700, or, half a mile before it gets off site. They may need to be monitored different than that same impervious square footage going on property with a 15-yard side yard setback. And so recognizing that one size doesn't always fit all and allowing the language to be written that it isn't so black and white that you can't interpret it reasonably.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, so we have our board members here and alternates, obviously lots of alternates sitting at the tables this morning. On the technical advisory committee, when I see the alternates, so if we recommend Joy, are we also recommending Joanna to be an alternate when she doesn't show up at these technical advisory meetings? Is that how that's gonna work?
That would be the idea, yeah.
That'd be the idea. In our bylaws, did we cover the alternates voting? I believe we did. So the alternates are eligible to vote?
Yes, they
For
are.
here.
Yeah.
But there's gonna be a separate technical advisory committee meetings, right?
We haven't had one of those in some time too, so getting the 7 seats that are currently expired refilled would give us then the opportunity to meet next month and get that going, and then that's where that committee can take a look at their bylaws and
Set their own rules.
set their own rules if they want. Or I think the bylaws haven't been changed since like 2012, 13, 14, something like that. So they've been the same bylaws for the TAC for quite some time. But yeah, that once that meeting occurs, then they would have an opportunity to.
Okay, so that's something that could happen, but it might not be in place right now.
I believe the current bylaws allowed whichever member or alternate that attended the meeting to vote, but only one of the. So we wouldn't get 2 votes if we both came to the meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
I know that's what it was set for this committee, but I didn't know.
It was,
Yeah.
unless it's changed, but that's
No.
how it was implemented.
I just gotta be careful, because I know then if I vote for you, then I'm also voting for Joanna, so.
I know, I have to check in line. I'm like, do I have a discussion? I don't know, do I have a good reputation or not?
That would be the idea, Larry, Yes.
If you need me to look for a different alternate, let me know.
And the TAC doesn't, that issue with the alternate on the SMC, the TAC doesn't quite have that scrutiny going on with it. So the bylaws do say that it would be one vote between the two. If Joy can't make it, then Joanna can come and fill her shoes.
Okay, good. I think that works good.
Any other questions? Abigail?
Since you were on the TAC for so long, what do you feel was one of your biggest accomplishments while you were serving on that board?
Well, I actually really thought we came to a very good consensus on the recommended approach to runoff volume reduction, but it didn't make its way the way we worded it all the way through the commission and into the ordinance. But I did feel that discussion and the implementation of the spreadsheet and the use of some outside parties from Madison that kind of developed some of the ways to calculate infiltration was valuable, and it was a great effort between all sides of the board, private sector, public sector, environmental, and it was a really good collaboration, but it didn't make it into ordinance for other political reasons. But from a technical advisory committee, I really thought that was, would you want to expand on that?
Do you want to talk about what it is, what the point was of it? Similar
You
to
might
what
be best,
Tracy's.
because you were involved on both the technical advisory committee and the commission, maybe you could speak to that easier.
So the runoff reduction, or runoff volume reduction strategy was a component of the ordinance where, similar to Tracy's request of, one size does not fit all. So it was taking not just a big detention basin in all situations, but you could decide whether or not your site fit these criteria and meet the runoff volume reduction by using other means, whether it was green infrastructure, whether it was bioswales, whether it was a just traditional detention basin. But there was a suite of options that you could do to meet this ordinance standards, and that runoff reduction volume strategy was part of that component of how to best decide what was in the best interest of your property and meet the needs of the ordinance at the same time. As Joy mentioned, they had infiltration, it would have had, some runoff, some green infrastructure, vegetation, wetlands, those types of components, similar to what we're struggling with right now in the county of making sure that we do have a groundwater, sustainable groundwater supply for the future.
So, any other questions from any other members? I have one last question for Joy. You were on for so many years. Tell us what accomplishments or changes that you would have liked to see occur, accomplishments that couldn't be obtained, that that we failed to do as on the TAC committee, and tell us what you would see or like to see differently.
So I think the evolution of TAC kind of has to do with the markets, right? And some laggings in the TAC meetings have also, because of changes to development, and so I would like to see in that, a consistency. However, if there's nothing to discuss, there's no reason to have all of those parties there. So, we haven't met for, when was the last, a year out here? I don't know, it's been, pardon?
Probably 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years. And so there's probably value to still keeping some continuity, even if there aren't major ordinance language pieces, kind of these check-ins, this is where we're at, this is what we're seeing. So I would think mandatory quarterly meetings, even if you don't have full agendas, would be beneficial.
Thank you.
Make one finish. If the alternate thing still has me a little bit questionable, you two work together, right? So if one can't make it, the other can make it, that's great. But there's a lot of these alternates, they don't really have that type of relationship as they will go down line. And as we look at the table, I know that a lot of the mayors were here, they're on the board, they made the vote that the alternates could show up with, sort of with the idea, and I see it, that they pass down the responsibility to be here to their alternates, and I think that's probably gonna continue on. Are the Tech Advisory Committee people gonna be passing down that responsibility? Excuse me, this isn't supposed to work like that. Passing down that to their alternates on a regular basis, is that, or just, I mean, there's a lot of them that don't work together, right?
Well, I understand your concern there, because to me, as I'm selecting here, I'm selecting on the main member.
Yeah, but how did the alternate automatically get tied to that member? I mean, was that an agreement between them? I would like Mike and Chris
Adam,
down.
I think you need to join.
Well, I think it was just from the fact of when I sent out the applications as these primary members, if they couldn't make it, I offered them the choice to list an alternate that they felt would be the most appropriate to step in for them.
Oh, okay, great.
So with the thinking that Joy would probably find the best suitable replacement for her to kind of continue her ideas and ideology on what she's trying to bring to the table.
Perfect, that clears it up for me. I'm good, thanks.
Good question. All right, well, thank you, Joy and
Thank you.
Joanna.
Yeah, of course, anytime.
No further questions, if anybody. So our next one is Mike Van Bergen. We'll stay right on schedule here, it looks like. Chris Dahm is his alternate.
I can speak to him in a little bit once we get started.
Sure.
Chris?
All right, Mike, tell us about yourself and why you want to be on this committee.
Okay, so my name is Mike Van Bergen. I've been a lifelong resident of McHenry County, Hebron, for 54 years. And so our family runs a grain farm and agri-tainment business. So we're kind of diverse in what goes on in our operation, from aspects of having the public and different things going on in our property to the regular farming that goes on in our rural area. I'm currently a drainage district commissioner for Hebron Township. I'm in my third term appointed by the county right now. My dad is also on that, and Chris Dahm is also on that. That district has been in effect since 1911 and been passed down through generations of farmers. So that's kind of the tie between my father and myself being on that commissioners right now. So I am also a trustee on the Conserve FS board, and that is headquartered here in Woodstock, and we have gone through quite a few of these building projects throughout the 13 counties that we cover in northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin. So difference in working through large projects with different counties. So been involved in that. Also was township supervisor in Hebron. Went through a big building project up there for our township, a new facility and new grounds. So very involved with the stormwater on that project, and quite a bit different on regulations that have started back then to now, or was lack of before we started that project too. So just like to have some input on some issues like that, and being involved in the rural area out there and having just a municipality in our drainage district and some small ad hoc subdivisions or potential subdivisions that are slated within our drainage district or township in that area would have a big impact on stormwater issues. So I'd like to be involved in that process to help. So you asked about, Mr. Smith had asked about alternates, and Chris Dahm would be my alternate. Chris is currently the president of the McHenry County Conservation District. He also owns a large trucking firm here in the county, involved with a few other trucking association I know, and you know, his own business of what it's done and growing. So I know Chris has some solar farm stuff, so there's another issue that could be brought up too at some point with these solar panels that are impacting our rural areas.
Okay. Then we'll turn it over to questions with everyone. Anybody got any questions?
Somebody's gotta have something.
I'll start out.
Look out.
The same question. Yeah. We're across the room, so we're good. How do you, I guess, look at our current stormwater ordinance in relation to, you know, the different types of properties that are throughout the county? You know, we've got a lot of ag, a lot of municipal, you know, how do you think those two can work?
Well, we were at a farm the other day. They just put up a new dairy facility with, Congressman LaHood was out and looked at the process they had to go through for going on their farm. It was 180 acres, put up 3 new buildings for cattle, not overly large. But on that 180 acres, they had to go through a conservation easement to adhere to their stormwater retention, detention. And I didn't really think that was right on that size of acres to have those restrictions put on that family on their farm for something like that. With that size of acres and the small footprint that they covered already. And we've seen that on our own property, we've seen that with the township. Many other buildings, projects that have gone out in our rural areas having these same type of issues. I guess we need to come to some type of continuity or something that needs to be more consistent than what it is with the use in the rural area of detention, retention. And again, I'm a boots on the ground type of guy. I go out and when there's something wrong in our drainage district, I'm the guy there doing the stuff. I'm the boots on the ground plus doing all the paperwork and doing all that. So I get it. When there's a problem, we try and address it right away in a situation like that, and that's the way the drainage district's always been. You know, it's not a paid job either. So my interest in all that is how it affects our farm and our neighbors' livelihood and getting the job done.
All right, any other questions come to mind after that? All right, well, Mike, thank you for taking your time to come today.
Thank you.
Moving right along here, is Al Schmidt here?
Let me see if he's outside.
Did you catch everything?
Pretty much. And somebody that maybe do 25 to 3 months, 60, 47 to 20.
Did not see Al.
All right,
So I don't know if we wanna.
what we'll do is if some of the other ones are here, keep it moving.
Okay.
We'll move down into some of them. Then we're a little early for you. But, is our next one on the list Mike Warner? Are you here, Mike?
Yeah.
Let's call you up and we'll just keep it moving since we have quite a few of those groups. If everybody's okay with that.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Morning.
All right, Mike, welcome. And let's hear what you got to say of why you want to be on this board.
Sure. I guess number one is I kind of enjoy this type of work. I know it's kind of odd, but for my engineering background, I started with the state down in Springfield and moved to DuPage County, then Lake County. And in Lake County, I had the same job kind of as Joanna. I was first off chief engineer, and then I moved to executive director for our Stormwater Management Commission. And over that period of time, I worked in Lake County for 26 years. You know, there's a lot of federal mandates and state mandates that get kind of pushed down to the counties and local governments. And so it was, the way I looked at it, it was kind of our job. And the regulations are never easy to understand. You know, they're fairly complex, kind of heavy on the language, things like that. So I kind of took the opinion that it was our job to uncomplicate these regulations, make it easier for designers and developers to meet those to the easiest way possible, and then translate that into ordinance language. You know, there was, I know a big one that came through was when the Army Corps lost their ability to regulate wetlands for isolated wetlands. And the county board and a lot of local officials, almost unanimously, it wasn't unanimous, but they said, we want to protect wetlands in Lake County just because of all the lakes and, you know, surface water resources. It was a big, you know, tourism and public water use is a huge issue in Lake County. So we developed a program for isolated wetlands and created a lot of language in there that made it easy for people to design around them or figure out what their impacts were, et cetera. And that was, I guess, that was one example of making a complex set of regulations more easy to understand for designers and developers.
Okay. All right, questions, I'll open it up. So, go ahead, Tracy.
Okay, I'll begin with my same question. I believe we've gotten a better part of our stormwater ordinance from Lake County. So you're probably familiar with most of how ours is put together.
Yep.
But what would you do to address the differences that McHenry County has in the agricultural uses and some of the smaller parcels throughout the county?
It's a good question. So I grew up in Morris, which is very ag heavy, and I've got I worked in farms throughout high school and college. One of my friends in Lake County used to be president of the Farm Bureau, Bill McNeil. And so we had a lot of discussions directly with the Farm Bureau when we were developing the ordinance. And what we came up with was, in the definition of development, farming is not considered development. So most of the regulations don't apply to farms. You know, it's only when there's kind of excavation or grading that's going on in the floodway or potentially a wetland that some of the regulations then apply. But kind of the way we looked at that was that, you know, land use issues. So in Lake County, I think it's the same in McHenry. The ordinance is only an impact ordinance. So the ordinance doesn't affect land use at all. So our philosophy was that land use decisions are best held by the local community or a combination, you know, or if it's unincorporated, the county board. And so we stayed out of land use issues completely. And that was a great line, a division line that we created.
Well, as a county board member whose district is primarily made up of agricultural lands, that's the number one complaint that I get are, you know, farms that are on larger parcels who have difficulty at the stormwater process for, you know, trying to put up a pole building, which typically, you know, when you look at land use and zoning is not, really there are only setback guidelines for that, but what really impacts the farms throughout the county is the stormwater ordinance. So that's a main concern that I see with the agricultural community.
So to address that, we set a fairly high amount of impervious surface before you trigger any type of detention. The other thing that didn't get through that we were trying to push through was that, so for large farms and even the forest preserve, you know, they would own several hundred acres and then put a, you know, small building that didn't affect the runoff on anybody else because it's all contained within their property. So what we attempted to do was to create a percent of development that wouldn't trigger any detention or something like that. So let's say, you know, we're at like 2 to 5% of your property you could develop and not have to provide any detention or water quality issues, as long as you could show that the runoff from that area did not impact, you know, your neighbor in a negative way. So we talked about that quite a bit, mostly with the Forest Preserve and some with farmers, but it never came to fruition.
Thank you.
Okay. And that was in Lake County?
That was in Lake County, correct?
Okay. All right. Because my question, Larry, you got one?
Well, you brought up Lake County. Is there any restrictions in the rules, or the rules are to be made yet about residents? Were they have to be from McHenry County, Lake County, or any other county, or
It's
in the rules regarding that?
It's really up to you and the rest of the members.
Okay.
You know, if you like the candidate, you don't have to exclude them because they don't reside within the county.
Okay, well, that's good. And then the other thing, and I probably should have asked it for the first couple of applicants, and I will for the rest of them, is do you plan on attending the meetings, or your alternate would be designated and be the main one that would be going, or should we anticipate that it would be you?
I would make as many as I could unless, you know, I was out of town. May is my direct supervisor, and we have a pretty like philosophy. So I would think that her input and my input would be very similar if I couldn't make it.
But your anticipation is that you would?
Yes, that's the intent, yeah.
Thank you. That's it.
I'll just say, I know Mike personally, so it's not really a question, but I don't know anybody else's familiarity. My previous employer had a lot of drainage issues, and like being the executive director at Lake County Stormwater Management was instrumental. I mean, we had probably one of the biggest drainage issue communities in the county, and so whether it was residents we had issues with. Mike came out on a Saturday to meet with that resident and figure out their drainage issues. So dredging projects, the list goes on and on. I can't think of it right now, but just wanted to put that out there for everyone.
All right. Anyone else with anything? So Mike, I thank you for your time and coming in and interviewing with us.
Thank you.
And we'll move on. Might have to, I don't want to get too far ahead. No whale yet?
I can check. I know Jody is here.
I'll go out.
That's good. If we wanted to, yeah, there she is. If we wanted to continue, Calvin not here.
All right, let's bring Jody forward. Jody, start.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jody. Again, tell us about yourself and why you want to be on this commission, and if you've been on it before.
Sure. Good morning. I'm Jody McCarthy. I'm the Manager of Government Services at Manhart Consulting. I have sat on this committee for years now, representing a couple different companies. I've been the alternate for an extended period of time for the past 2.5, 3 years, but I've definitely made every meeting and definitely enjoyed them. So it's always a good discussion and a good crowd, especially when talking about the agricultural issues. I have a background in design, stormwater, and then also site design. I worked previously for Lake County SMC, actually, when Mike was there back in the day. And I've also served as a consultant for Lake County SMC and McHenry County here as well. I was one of your review consultants with a bunch of the permit reviews. So, I know the staff pretty well. The reason I love this committee is, the discussion and the thought and, just I guess the discussion and impacts that go into every single either amendment or, the way that the ordinance or amendments might impact different communities, development communities or villages. I represent 2 border villages, so I'm the village engineer for Lakemore and Port Barrington. So these, discussions, Lakemore is not certified, and then Port Barrington is certified under Lake County. But these discussions really let me take that information back to the community, because I have to not only design, when we have our municipal capital projects, we have to design to these standards, but then I also have to do permit reviews and review to these standards as well when it comes to the ordinance, and make sure that our applicants are following all the rules. So it's a wonderful way to get insight, to be able to give the community's input, like represent the villages. But then at the same time, as a design engineer, I can see how this could potentially impact us and our design, and how, it affects the bottom line for the villages too.
Okay. We'll move on down to questions.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Tim.
Tim Watt, Village Homie. Do you think the municipal requirements and the ag requirements should be the same, or do you think there should be differences between them?
You mean in terms of storm, like detention?
Like if you're, like with what Tracy said earlier, if a farmer's doing a building, are you gonna treat that the same? Do you think that should be treated the same as a commercial building within a municipality?
I mean, they're definitely different. Like Mike had said before, when you're looking at an agricultural use, you're talking about like a 2,000 square foot building on hundreds and hundreds of acres. That's significantly different than, a village hall that's kind of nestled between a bunch of other buildings. Like, the way that I always look at the ordinance, all of the stormwater ordinances, either Lake, McHenry, Cook, it's about minimizing adverse impacts to adjacent properties, and you really have to look at the parcel as a whole. And when something goes in, how will it impact other people? Like say, for instance, agricultural community, like land, drain tiles. Drain tiles are really the bane of our existence in a lot of our villages. So having to, maybe the agricultural parcels, the focus is on drain tiles and, what the impact would be to perimeter sites or wetlands, as opposed to like a municipal site, downtown. It would definitely be about, point discharges and not adversely impacting them. So I think they ultimately are different, and you would have to, every site is special, and you have to look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Tricia, you have your hand up?
No, I'm just deeply thinking here, yes. You know what I mean? I'm like, power raise, yeah.
Okay. All right, and Jody, you were on the commission previously.
Yes.
Did I read, were you vice chair of that commission?
No, I was not.
Okay. Somebody else had read that. Okay.
It might have been, was it Steve?
No, I'm vice chair, Steve's chair.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to let Tracy ask a question, I'm going to follow up.
Sure. Do you, since you are familiar with the stormwater ordinance in its current form, then do you feel that those percentages are adequate for ag use versus municipal small parcel?
I guess I would, currently, as I understand it right now, without gaining any sort of input from the ag community myself, I would say, it seems reasonable, but I would definitely, if you're seeing that there are certain, developments that are struggling with meeting some of the requirements, I mean, I definitely think that could be something the TAC should consider.
All right, well, you just answered my question, so. All right, well, thank you, and appreciate you coming today.
Thank you.
All right, now, Al,
Yes.
you're up next.
All right. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
Hot spot.
All right, Al. Welcome and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to be on this commission and.
Sure. I grew up in Spring Grove, Illinois, on a farm many years ago, 63 years ago, and I got a lot of roots with the farming and doing a lot of work still in the county. I no longer live in the county. I live in Rockford now, but I been practicing this since 1988, been on my own since 1996. And as most of the county people, staff know here, I do a lot of work within the rural areas of the county. And a lot of the projects I'm doing, I wouldn't say half of them, but a good percentage of them, are either horse-type barn facilities, farmers expanding their additional buildings, and some of these times, a lot of times they're triggering into stormwater detention, where, to me, I've had conversations with Stoyan, a lot of the staff about such things, thinking, wow, where this percentage in the line got drawn, where, it's either 20,000 square foot, 1 acre, 5%. There's even a 10% one in there. And it's, again, there's these lines that are drawn that some of these people are just over. And it's like, now you're going to kick them into a stormwater detention. And I think a lot of this, there's could be some other points of view looked at it. Maybe a variance instead of going hard to us detention basin. All right. I just think that's one main reason that I'd like to be on it, again, because of my experience and doing a lot of clients' work pertaining to some of these hardships. It really becomes a hardship on some properties. And I'd like to see if I can contribute in some fashion to how can we make an adjustment. And that's a very specific manner there that I'm referring to, of course, as many other aspects of the ordinance. But I bet I've done over 25 of these kind of projects in the last 5 years, at least. And some we can easily comply and some are very difficult. So that's in a nutshell. And what else can I let you know?
All right, well, let's everybody ask you questions. Is your alternate here, or are you representing?
Thomas Morose?
Yes.
He's not even a professional engineer yet, which I am, not to say that he won't be someday, but he's 28 years old and young, and he's very sharp. He's been with me for 4.5 years now. I'll look over taking over my company here in the near future. So I look at continuing to go part-time here, hopefully in 2 more years. We'll see how it all works out.
So you would see yourself as attending most all the meetings?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, open it up to other questions. Larry?
You talk about not meeting some of the standards and it's sort of on the edge of
right.
Whether it should be or shouldn't be detention, stormwater ordinances, conservation easement. Do you have anything specific that you might be suggesting if you went to a committee meeting and say, hey, this is a line that we need to put some kind of padding on so we can work with it?
Specific, no. I've been talking to a lot of other counties, Kane County, Lake County. They've got other ideas, and I haven't really researched. I know some of the stuff that is in your ordinance you've got from some of those counties, no question about it. And there's some parts, there's easements that go on some of the stuff that on the adjacent properties, which are very difficult to get. Because like I'm working on one right now that Stoyan's aware of, and the neighbor's not gonna give it to us. And 3 years ago, that was not in place. Is that right or wrong? Well, it's the ordinance, and I think there's some things that need to be revisited, such as trying to get an easement on neighboring property, and it's a farmer, and a lot of farmers don't, a lot of them are friendly, but a lot of them, hey, don't impose something on my property. And I client has got to redesign his detention basin system now for a different method other than tying into a drain tile.
Okay.
So I would do a lot more research if I was on this of see what others have available, plus let's really talk more about what we're really protecting when, you know, whether it's a nursery or whether it's a horse farm or whether it's, you know, farmers do a lot of things that make land impervious and they're not even, you know, there's hardened driveways and stuff all over the place from farmers. I grew up on a farm. I know these things and see them all the time.
So you haven't been on this committee before then?
No.
Okay. Have you attended any of the meetings?
No.
Okay.
Well, there haven't been any in
Has it been any?
how many years?
Not a fair
I'm
question.
not even sure if they're in the.
Okay, that wasn't a fair question.
That's okay. If I was welcome to attend, maybe I would.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Well, thank you, Al.
You're welcome. Yep. Would you like me to stick around or I can just go?
You know, none of you who've already spoken are needed to stay. We won't be bringing you back forward.
Up to you.
So you're free to go. You don't have to sit here
I
today.
got a busy day, so if you don't mind. Thanks.
I appreciate that. The next one I have is, in order, David Watkins. I know we're early on this, so we can't just go on and move right through these today.
Hey, Jim, I know there's been a lot of discussion. If anybody wants me
Nobody
to
out there?
give you a quick summary on any of these detention triggers or something like that, as you guys are going forward, just let me know.
You know what,
It's been some
let's
time.
do that a little bit right now, since it's fresh in
Yes.
all of our minds,
Right, yeah.
since we have some time.
Okay,
We're a little bit ahead of ourselves here.
so, and I'll just,
Larry, or,
Not on the agenda? But
well, it's not on the agenda, but is this just discussion? We're not taking any action on that.
I can hold it for
You're the
topic
you're the chairman.
section, but
No, I'm gonna call it as valid, since especially it came up in our questions for our candidates.
Okay.
So I would call it as valid to have that discussion.
okay, so essentially the detention triggers are, we look at the impervious area and it is a hard 20,000 square foot trigger. Now I won't be able to give you the history on why 20,000, why this number, why that number, but that was the number that was chosen, and that's a number that we analyzed after the ordinance went into effect, which would be 2005, I forget the exact date. So any impervious prior to that, it's basically grandfathered in. So if you go and you reorganize your site, you're not getting deemed on having an existing X amount. It would only be, what are you adding after the ordinance went into effect? So that's the first thing that we look at is that trigger hit? Once that trigger is hit, then we look at the property itself. You can exceed that number. You can go up to 10% or an acre of your overall property. So for the larger farms, you really haven't had any impervious areas since the ordinance went into effect, and you've got, you know, hundreds of acres. You can go up to an acre without any problems, as long as whatever you're doing, you know, one of the things that Jody mentioned is how are you affecting neighbors? So if you're going in the middle of the hundreds of acres, you know, probably not a big deal. If you're going right up next to a potential subdivision that you drain into those people's backyards, then that might be a problem. So there is that kind of caveat on there that it is reviewed for that purpose. So if you meet that, it's basically an exemption, those two components. You have enough square footage and you're not gonna be impacting a neighbor. After that, if you're a really big farm, that's where the conservation easement comes into play. It basically says that you can designate 5% of your property to impervious area without basically any requirements. Again, you do have to make sure you're not going to be impacting one of the neighbors, but with the conservation easement, it does have to go into a plat and you do have to designate those areas. You can adjust them as much as you want in the future. Additionally, you can do that easement area and you could also provide detention. So you can do a combination of the two because we recognize some of these ag properties, they're gonna have stuff, you know, impervious area here, impervious area there. So it's not like a small site where, okay, we can collect it all into a detention basin. That's kind of the idea behind the conservation easement is potentially you throw, you know, your 20-foot wide gravel paths going out to the back. Over here, there's a barn, over here, there's a barn. Maybe you're gonna be exceeding that and instead you figure out, okay, I'll provide detention for this new ag building that's right next to the river. That might be a much better solution. So no one's necessarily, you have to do it one way, but those are the different numbers that Al was bringing up between the 20,000 square foot trigger, the 10% exemption, and then the 5% conservation easement. And that conservation easement would go in front of the PED for approval. So that's the numbers. I don't know all the history behind why those specific numbers were chosen, but that's where they're at today.
Okay. All right, thank you. Let's see, looking for Dave Watkins yet, but we still got some time. Who else do we have here? We got Darren Olson? Stephanie? Steve. Or Steven?
Yeah.
Can't read, I'm sorry.
I've got the glasses too, so.
Okay, you're on.
That was worth
All right, so well, tell us about yourself.
All right, so my name's Steve Bicking. I've been in stormwater management for about 33 years. I started out working at IDOT in the hydraulics section. Then I moved to McHenry County in 1998, was working for Smith Engineering. So I've lived in the county, in Crystal Lake, in Lakewood since then. In 1999, I became the village engineer in Spring Grove. So the company has represented Spring Grove for a while. Al was actually the previous village engineer prior to me, but while he was at Smith. Then as part of that, in 1999, there wasn't a county-wide ordinance then, so we had our own ordinances, which we then had to update, to the NIPSI ordinances to get our discharge permit. And it's been kind of an ongoing balance there with the municipality and development. There's been a lot of development in Spring Grove since then, with balancing stormwater management as well as developer needs and, ag needs. There's a pretty good amount of agriculture there, as well as like the new thing with the ag tourism. So that's something that Spring Grove has been balancing, since the ordinance was adopted in 2004. I've been the chairman of the TAC since I don't know for how long, but I've been on the TAC since it was started. I believe Joy and I are the ones that have been on the TAC since inception. And so I've got a pretty good background on McHenry County and some of the challenges that are being faced. One thing I don't think that's been discussed so much yet is the impact of the stormwater ordinance on roadway drainage as far as transportation goes in the McHenry County Transportation Department. This is an issue with like a lot of counties around here. And DuPage County recently changed their ordinance to more closely follow like what IDOT does, which is they provide detention only for the additional impact of the stormwater, not necessarily at the same rate that is required for development, which requires less detention volume overall. And this helps with the county budgets, roadway budgets, and everything else, because you don't need as much volume for stormwater storage, and you can, therefore you're not spending like taxpayer dollars for purchasing right of way to obtain detention volume. So I think that that's one thing as far as being on the TAC that I would like to investigate, I guess, going forward, are ways that we could modify some of the roadway detention requirements to allow, you know, perhaps a little bit less volume required for public roadway developments.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else you want to say?
No.
Okay. I'll open it to question. Teresa?
I'll finally ask a question. So we haven't had a meeting in 3 years. Is that dictated because the Stormwater Commission itself hasn't been pushing for advice, or what's keeping the meetings from occurring?
It was the stormwater meeting because there were issues when it came to voting.
Yes, yeah, no.
So that was the main issue that prevented the TAC from meeting. There wasn't really anything to meet about because we couldn't interact with the commission.
Okay. That kind of my assumption that.
Well, I appreciate his answer too on
Yes.
that, because that's a flat out fact. We just couldn't
Right.
get an agenda, a quorum together, which is why we changed the alternates component. As chairman, are you aware of any reason why an alternate could not vote? You have they have the full capability on that TAC committee.
For our TAC, the alternates can vote. But I believe it was just the way the language was written in the, you know, the enabling language. So it was something, I mean, and you're aware that, you know, the Stormwater Commission, everything was working fine until I think somebody brought up, I don't know what, somebody brought up the fact that, hey, you know, there's some, you know, can we have alternates voting? So, I mean, we were doing, I mean, probably 18 years, 17 years since it started in 2004, you know, it was working through 2020, and we were passing ordinances and doing stormwater, modifying the ordinance, you know, so things were being done up until that point when I believe there was a legal, you know, opinion that was provided.
Yeah, that's good. Okay,
There's a
Teresa?
follow-up. So is there, in your mind, since you have been chairman, is there a lot of business that needs to get done now on tax, and since you, like, do you have ideas of what needs to be done on the tax?
Yeah, I imagine there's things that have been building up, you know, things are constantly changing, so we probably have a number of things that we need to take care of. I haven't talked to Stoyan that much about it, but I have been coming to the commission meetings when they've occurred. And like I said, I have some ideas. I'm sure there's some the commission probably has some ideas of things that they'd like to see taken care of. So I'm sure once we get started, there'll be a long list of items to look at, you know, from a tax standpoint. And then it'll just be a matter of prioritizing those.
Harry?
Just thought, and I don't know that I want to get into this discussion right now, but I'd be curious if there's anything that was passed previous to the legal opinion about the alternates voting that could be challenged in court as to whether it's valid or not, that maybe the current Stormwater Commission needs to go back and review.
I leave that up to Stoyan, but I don't think.
I'd have to probably throw it at the SA.
That's why I don't want to get into it right now, but it was on top of my head and I had to get it out.
I don't know if there's anything that we passed.
Say it one more time.
If there was something that was passed, that the alternates voted on from whatever it was, 2004 to 2000, that somebody could go back and say it wasn't legally voted on, so it could be challenged as to whether that ordinance was valid or not. Okay.
Yeah. It's out of order, but I can probably respond.
It's up to the chairman, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead if you know.
So the technical advisory is an advisory committee to the commission. So we are providing you our consensus of our thoughts, but it's no binding. We have no authority to bind your ordinance or invoke any restrictions on anyone. So from that perspective, any changes would have been voted at the commission level and not at the TAC, which is just a recommending body.
I agree with that completely. It's the commission level that I was,
So you're a commission.
was questioning
Okay.
because there was alternates voting on the commission level too, right?
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
So just something to look into.
I have to say an easy answer to that would be to go through our meetings in the past before that arose, that question. And we had a few mayors there all the time on some of those decisions, so I think we would be okay, but it's worth checking out. Okay, so anyway, more questions for
I have one.
Tracy?
Thank you, Stoyan, for kind of letting us know where we were at with the larger parcel drainage rules and need for retention. Do you feel that those are a good guideline, or do you feel that there could be some adjustments made?
I think those are probably good guidelines. We considered various input when we established those. Maybe the conservation easement of putting property within that, maybe that's something that's could be revisited. But I think from a standpoint of increased impervious on a farm, you know, I agree with the other applicants that have said it's really what's downstream, what's being affected by that increased impervious. If it's running off into a ditch or it's just running off the property in the course of natural drainage and not affecting any adjacent properties, I don't see a problem with an increase in impervious level. It's just if it's up against a subdivision or up against, you know, some other, you know, property that's going to be affected, that you'd really want to consider stormwater detention in that, you know, area. And it's probably also with, you know, farms and things of that nature that you could put, you know, volume control and maybe eliminate some of the stormwater detention requirements if they provided volume control. Because if we can get infiltration to occur within the farmer's property, it's not gonna, you know, severely affect, even if it's in a SARA area, I wouldn't anticipate it having an impact on groundwater because they're not using, you know, salt. It's not like a roadway system where you're gonna get a lot of salt, or a parking lot or something like that.
Okay,
Yeah, I think of part of the issue with some farm parcels are what is being considered impervious, and which is adding, you know, to the base amounts. I personally don't feel sand is impervious, but apparently we look at sand as impervious.
It may be compacted gravel that's considered impervious, and it has a slightly different, yeah, a slightly different value than, you know, asphalt or concrete, but so it will allow, you know, some infiltration, but yeah, those are things that are kind of, you know, that's just kind of a general rule of thumb that compacted gravel is considered impervious. But like I said, if it's not affecting anybody, I don't really see there needing to be limits, and I kind of agree with Mike that if you can differentiate what you're regulating from the standpoint of based on land use, you know, maybe there isn't a need to, on ag land use, to you know, enforce some of the requirements of the ordinance on them, is, you know, like we would have to do on a development within a municipality or a, you know, a commercial or industrial development.
I think the difficulty lies, how do you write that in the ordinance? That's the challenge, I think. I think where we're at right now, it's, you know, there are a lot of challenges for property owners.
okay, let's move on from that one, because we're kind of getting in the weeds right now. So I want to bring that back in a little bit. So, any other questions? Yeah.
What's your proudest accomplishment on the tech, since you've done it since its inception?
I think just getting it established and making it consistent between municipalities on how the stormwater is taken care of. Because prior to having, you know, the ordinance, the countywide ordinance in place, you know, there's a lot of development occurring in the county during the 2000s and late 90s, and you'd have municipalities playing off one another, you know, as to what was enforced, what wasn't enforced. It wasn't a good situation to have that and have developers doing that. So I think having it countywide, just establishing it and having a set of rules for everybody to play by was a good thing for the county.
Then I'll follow up. What didn't you get accomplished that you would have liked to see accomplished? Other than, I think you brought up the roads, transportation issue.
Yeah, that's kind of, as a transportation engineer, that's kind of one of my big things that, I mean, I see it just maybe, I mean, DuPage County just changed their ordinance recently. So maybe 4 or 5 years ago, it was updated, but that's probably one of the more current things that I would see that I'd like to get changed or like to revisit with the TAC, is just looking at those implications on stormwater detention for roadway expansion or roadway systems.
Okay. Well, thank you, and I appreciate you taking the time. I apologize for butchering your name.
No, that's all right.
Okay. Did I see it? Is Dave Watkins? All right, we'll call you up. Go ahead, Dave, and tell us about yourself and why you want to be on this commission, and give us a little bit of your history.
My name's Dave Watkins. I'm a building inspector for the city of McHenry. I started working with McHenry County 20 years ago in February as a plans examiner and building inspector. As a building inspector, I enforce the stormwater ordinance on development sites and everything like that, so I get to see how the ordinance is implemented and how it affects everybody and how certain things need to be addressed. We do have situations where, you know, the downstream people are picking up development sites up here, water flows downhill and it doesn't get addressed properly. So my whole point of being on the TAC committee and making my, I guess, stand on development, everything like that, would be to allow better interpretation and implementation of the stormwater ordinance and make recommendations to the ordinance. See if we can address any of the issues downstream.
Okay, I'll open it up to questions. No? You're the one that has a lot of questions. All right,
Well, okay, how has, at the municipal level, how have you worked with, say, your non-municipal neighbors?
We've tried implementing, so when we put up the county property and everything, we obviously work with the county and everything to implement areas where we can install like riprap, things that, you know, things that'll slow the water flow, areas that can absorb and address the water flow so you're not flooding out the farm fields, things like that. We do try to work with them on that. Obviously, we have certain areas where it's hard for us, so we lean on the county to address some of it, which they do. So that's where we're at right now.
The river.
are there any changes to the ordinance currently that you see as important on your side?
I don't think the ordinance addresses enough for the downstream. It does address it, but it doesn't address enough for it, and I would like to see more municipalities work together in order to address that issue. So it doesn't go from this municipality to the next municipality to the next municipality, just keep creating a bigger and bigger problem. You know, it should, if we can address it on site before it goes anywhere, that's what we're looking at. I don't think the ordinance addresses enough of that.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, well, thank you so much. Okay, I don't believe I called on Darren Olson yet. Oh, Darren. Darren, go ahead and tell us about yourself and some things about the ordinance and different things about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Darren Olson. I am the head of the Water Resources Department at Christopher Burke Engineering. I have been working in the area and actually at Christopher Burke Engineering for 25 years. Worked in all facets of water resources engineers throughout northeastern Illinois. Worked in DuPage County, Lake County, Cook County, City of Chicago, and of course here in McHenry County, where I started working with the City of Crystal Lake in 2008. I am currently doing the stormwater reviews for them, implementing the stormwater ordinance, and also doing the same for Cary and Harvard. I have really enjoyed the time I've spent working in McHenry County with the stormwater ordinance. There are very unique facets of McHenry County that we don't have in other areas. DuPage County essentially started stormwater up here in northeastern Illinois, but McHenry County is very different. You have a lot of groundwater resources here that need protection, and you have the urbanization going up against agricultural areas as well. And so that makes it very complex. And I think having a strong stormwater ordinance really helps to, number one, protect your resources, but also to allow development to occur in a fashion that I believe not only protects the water quality and the water resources that you have, but then also allows for economic development within the county. And so those two kind of competing interests, as well as the agricultural interests, certainly make for challenges, but I think that the ordinance does a very good job, and certainly there are some things that could help improve that. I'm very interested in the groundwater component of it, and that leads to then water quality, and how can we help to, as the areas develop, how can you help to protect your groundwater resources? And I think implementing as much green infrastructure as possible when development occurs is an important part of that. I'm on several committees with the American Society of Civil Engineers, and I'm able to see how stormwater and stormwater management is implemented throughout the country. And there are some areas that have similar water quality issues and groundwater resources as you here in McHenry County. And I think being able to bring some of that experience from places like maybe a Maryland or Pennsylvania that have and that implement best management practices, I think is important for the county as well.
Okay. Any questions? And tell me about your alternate that you have on there. Is that person, you intend to be at most of the meetings?
I do.
You're appointed?
Yep, and so Andy Pizzo is the alternate. She does stormwater reviews with me for both Crystal Lake and for Cary. She has about 11 years of experience and is a project manager in our water resources department.
Okay. No other questions? All right. Thank you, Darren.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we got Darren down. We've got, if I show correctly, Ryan Gillespie next.
Which Brian was the one that couldn't make it, so Dennis was gonna come in, and that's the one resume that I sent to the group, so I don't know if Dennis is here. I think Scott went to go check real fast.
Let's move on to Bruce Meyer.
He's in the parking lot walking in.
He's, okay, then.
All right, let's move on to Bruce. Hello, Bruce. Tell us about yourself and why you want to be on this commission.
My name is Bruce Meyer. Been a lifelong farmer in McHenry County. Been kind of a nomad in the county. We started out in Crystal Lake. The development pushed us out of there. We moved to Huntley. Developers came to there, and then we ended up in Hebron. I've seen a lot of different drainage going on with Lake in the Hills and Crystal Lake and some of the projects that were going on. Used to be a resident of McHenry County. We moved up to Genoa City, Wisconsin 10 years ago to get our kids in a different school district. I used to be a commissioner on the Hebron Drainage District. Dan approached me, and this is my alternate, Dan Volkers. He's the manager of the Farm Bureau. So he's gonna be my alternate in the spring and fall when we're busy and I can't make it. I used to be president in the Farm Bureau for 6 years, and that was when the Stormwater Ordinance was first instituted. And we were fielding a lot of calls and a lot of complaints and a lot of farmers trying to build buildings on their property. I was asked to serve on the TAC. I made a couple of meetings, but due to time constraints, I couldn't continue the position. I think Dan took it over, and then, I don't know, we had another alternate show up then. I'd like to see a fair and equitable ordinance for agriculture, and I'd be a liaison to the Farm Bureau Board.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else with questions? Larry Smith.
Yeah, how often does the tech committee meetings, I mean, how often would they meet, or is that yet to be seen, because it's sort of new here?
I think it was once a month was what I was.
Every other month is how it was previously set up. So obviously, since they haven't had the first meeting yet, we're looking at February where they can then set that schedule and probably mimic this commission of every other month. But if they wanted to meet every month because of potentially some of the backlog issues that were mentioned, or, you know, that's where a lot of that would kind of come to fruition to see what kind of schedule they'd like to put together.
Okay.
But a bare minimum would probably follow what was done in the past of every other month.
So Mr. Mayor would be attending half the meetings maybe, kind of thing? You'd be busy in the spring and the fall, obviously.
Yep.
Dan's very capable, I know. And you guys would coordinate that?
Ahead of time, yes.
From the inception of our TAC committee, we always had a liaison from the Farm Bureau. And is that part of our rules, or that's just part of what we've wanted to see?
You know, it's not something that, this discussion that I had with Dan, it was not something that was hard-coded anywhere.
Okay.
I think it was just, yes, that pretty much every previous committee wanted that presence. Just my approach to getting the applicants in, though, I wanted to make it reasonable if someone got word that they could apply to provide that vehicle forward. So I did ask Dan and the Farm Bureau to just kind of go with the flow from the consensus of we're open to everybody being able to apply, and then the committee would have that consideration, but it's not written anywhere that Farm Bureau, no matter what, has a seat at the table. But historically, they have always been there.
I think it's very beneficial to have Farm Bureau membership represented, just for the liaison between what's going on here and pretty much all the members of the Farm Bureau, because it's instant. I mean, tell some of the Farm Bureau and it spreads like that. So
let's stick with our applications here. We're getting into deliberation, so we're a little ahead of ourselves. So let's stick with applications. Any other questions pertaining to the applicant?
Would you like me to also do a self-introduction just
I
for
would.
Okay, not all the faces here I recognize. So Dan Volkers, I served as the manager for McHenry County Farm Bureau since 2003. Kind of jumped in when the bus had already left off on the first stormwater ordinance, so we're kind of new to the game and learning as we went. It's been interesting. I've either had a seat at the table or served as an alternate, so I've kind of seen it progress over the years. I think there's been some good accomplishments. Some of the fixes don't solve all the situations. I think the easement issue was helpful for some of the larger farm operations. It does create some barriers for some that may have a small plot where they're actually doing the building. So a lot of times the farms are dealing with 20 different parcels, and one may be their primary location in which they have most of their farm activities. So it's been interesting seeing that evolve. A lot of the conversations in regards to development really came right around that time that was mentioned earlier. We had a lot of subdivision development with concentration of water flows that ended up on farmland. I think the ordinance is helping to address some of those. I still think there's opportunities there that we can work on to try and get those flows directly to a ditch or a creek or some other channel instead of across farmland that we do currently. So I think there are opportunities to improve. I also think there's a big concern of protecting your fellow neighbor and the property rights. It's, you know, you don't want to take advantage of someone else and impact their ability to use their property. And so while I appreciate that farm exemption sounds wonderful, I also think we have to look at it site by site to realize that it could impact a neighbor, and we have to take those considerations into place.
Okay. And you would be an alternate when, I guess, Bruce, I know you said time constraints in the past.
My kids have grown now, so kind of let go of some of those constraints.
All right, well, I don't know, sometimes
I'm getting
it
older.
creates more. All right, thank you. Do you have, anybody else have any more questions? Okay, I have no further questions. If I'm correct, we're down to the last applicant, and I think Dennis, did I say your last name, Dreer?
Yeah, Dreer.
Come on up.
Okay.
You're in the hot seat.
Beautiful, thank you. Timing was great. And actually, I'm an alternate to Brian Valesky, who is the primary individual. We're both water resources engineers, though.
I saw that email that Brian was not able to make it today.
Right, he's got a client meeting today.
Well, tell us about yourself. Tell us a little bit about Brian, because he's the one who's going to be appointed. You're going to be speaking
Yeah,
on his behalf.
well, Brian is a water resource engineer, like I mentioned. We've actually worked together over the course of our careers for two different consultants. We worked with Cowie Gudmundsson Leader, which was a consultant that worked basically for developers. So very familiar with ordinances and that kind of thing. We're currently both working obviously for Geosyntec Consultants, which is a national water resource, actually multifunctional environmental consultant. Our specialty is water resources. And so Brian works on everything from, and it's probably all in the application here, from floodplain management, stormwater management, ordinances, watershed management, green infrastructure, climate change, et cetera, et cetera. So it's pretty broad ranging in terms of his background. My background is, obviously, I'm a little bit older than Brian, so I've been at it for about 45 years. I worked in regional planning at first and developed a lot of the regional ordinances that have become the basis for some of the county stormwater ordinances now. Again, did a lot of the same things as Brian, and green infrastructure is one of my particular focuses. I should, before I get too far, if you wouldn't mind, I want to make one correction. This was an oversight. There's a question, have you ever worked for the county before? We actually are working as a subcontractor right now to another firm on the county's 2050 plan. Some of you are familiar with the 2050 plan. We're working on green infrastructure and water resources elements of that plan, so that needs to be updated or corrected. So again, it was just an oversight in filling out the application.
Okay. Okay, I'll open it up to questions. Nobody says any questions?
Do you think that you'll be attending a percentage of the, like, how much do you intend to thinking that you'll be the one that actually be meeting with these attack committees?
No, I think it depends on the frequency of the meetings.
Yeah.
Again, Brian is local. He's in Algonquin. I'm actually in Bull Valley, so it's very convenient. So it would be a matter of filling in. I think like any of your prime, members, if there's a conflict that can't be avoided, like a contractor meeting. But if the meetings are scheduled on a regular basis, where you have, say, second Tuesday of the month at 10 a.m., it's very easy to schedule that. If the meetings come up more randomly and you already have a meeting that really can't be avoided, then that would be an issue. But just knowing Brian, he's very flexible when it comes to these kinds of things. And again, like I say, he's locally based, so that's my understanding of how it would work.
Okay, Larry?
Dennis, excuse my old timer's disease here, but it seems like as chairman of P&D, I've interviewed you for something other at the county here. Is it, or am I just?
I've done a lot of work with the county, but not employed by the county. So for example, going back to, the 2030 plan, which was 2008, 2007, I was actually on the plan commission for that. I worked on the county green infrastructure plan as a pro bono, basically advisor. I also was the primary author of the county's conservation design ordinance. So did a lot of work with the county, but not actually employed by the county.
Okay, and I didn't mean employed, I thought some other committee that you interviewed for, a commission, and I just.
Probably related to the plan commission. And again, like I said, we are currently working as a contractor on the 2050 plan. I've also worked on local watershed plans like the Boone Creek watershed plan.
And that very well is part of the planning commission.
You've probably seen my face around the county building a few times.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that.
Sure,
I just wasn't sure.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, Tracy's got one.
Do you feel that our current ordinance fits well with the 2030 plan and moving forward to the 2050 plan?
Great question. And as a matter of fact, there are a number of recommendations, I think, both in the 2030 plan and in the draft 2050 plan, which would suggest opportunities for reevaluation. So just a little bit of background on that. As I mentioned, I worked in regional planning many years ago and formed some of the basis for some of the things that are going on right now. We've also been on tax for most of the other counties in the region, as well as Cook County, MWRD. So there are certain elements of different ordinances which have evolved over time that I think McHenry County, if you haven't done it recently, you should probably just go through your ordinance entirely, and that's probably one of the purposes of the TAC, to evaluate, number one, is it consistent with regional standards? Number two, and maybe I should reverse the order, is it consistent with the planning philosophy which is embedded in the 2050 plan and 2030 plan, which has been adopted by the county board? So you have that overarching policy. I mean, obviously you want that consistency between those kind of plans and the ordinance. And I'll just give you a couple examples if you like real quickly. With climate change, whether we like it or not, things are changing. The 100-year storm has gone up by, I think, 13%, as according to the latest evaluation done by the State Water Survey. That means your 100-year floods are going to be going up substantially, so you need to accommodate that if your ordinance hasn't adjusted to that. I believe there already have been some adjustments for that. That's something to look at. One other really big one, and I think Scott Kuykendall is here, probably speak to this. There's the intersection between groundwater and water supply and the need to recharge local aquifers and stormwater management. If we take all of our stormwater and we put it in, storm sewers, curb and gutter systems, treat it at the end of the pipe, that water never gets back into the ground. And so I think there's some really big opportunities for, again, very carefully treating that water by looking at the current standards for infiltration. Low impact development is another term for it. And again, based on our work with some other counties, I think there are some opportunities I would personally see there that should be evaluated by this committee, and that obviously the TAC could be looking at to ensure that more green infrastructure is enabled, encouraged, or in some cases required by the stormwater ordinance, so you have that connection to clean groundwater.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
If no other further questions, we're going to move on, and thank you for your time. Okay, so I think I've caught it, but I didn't miss anyone, did I?
I don't believe so, no.
You checked off? I think I got them all.
I think you're good.
Okay. Now, let's get before we go to 4.12, I'll say for all those of you who interviewed, you don't have to stay here, part of the deliberation. I don't know how the members feel.
Public meeting, they can stay if they want.
They can stay if they want? Okay. So I want to ask a little bit, I'm the chair of this committee. And I'd like to ask a question on this to make sure we handle this correctly, the way we're doing these appointments. Because in the last meeting, we specifically asked about the actual appointment. Who makes those appointments, correct? And I believe, Stoya, that you had said the chairman of the commission makes the appointment of all of the, so.
Yeah, if you want, I can pull up the specific language, but basically it is you are appointing it with the consent and consideration of the committee.
This does not have to move forward to the county board then, so when we make the decision here today, if we make that decision today, it moves forward.
It's final. Well, maybe you can change it in the future, but yes.
Well, I just wanted to make that clarification because this is unusual. Any other committee that we have, it's not the same.
Yeah, let me open up the.
I'm gonna end up being the bad guy, I can tell you that right now.
Let me get the bylaws up here, but yes, that's the. Let's see.
While he brings that up, Jim, could I just have a second to say, everybody that I was in here interviewing brings a lot to the table. And I don't, it's gonna be, hopefully that they don't feel misplaced if they don't get appointed to the commission, and that they would attend and participate and in whatever way they can, even if they're not commission members. Because from whatever background they come from, they just bring a lot to the table for this.
Right, there's a lot of very strong qualities to each individual.
Absolutely.
We will have more opening up, is it the end of this year?
Let me, I had
They
the
all
list.
expired December 1st.
Yeah, is it December 1st?
November that I had, yeah, that's why I was pulling up the list. So yeah, basically December of this year as well, all the 2024 openings would be available. And, you know, I did mention the IEPA and Army Corps as part of your deliberation consideration. That's something for you guys to consider as well prior to that, if that's something you wanted to entertain. Let me get to that language. So the TAC member shall be appointed by the chairman of MCSC with the advice and consent of the MCSC per the MCSC bylaws.
Okay. All right, so now that that's clarified, I just want to make sure. So, being this way, I'm going to open up discussion. Go ahead, Larry.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Do you want me
again. Could you rotate that up? It says represented for each of the following categories, and I just would like to
Yeah.
read what
Yeah.
that's.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, I hadn't looked at it previous, that's all.
Sure, I can leave that up if you guys want.
Sure.
Or I can go back to the member list, just whatever you guys need.
Right. Okay, so let's move on, and unfortunately, I don't know the rest of the half that's up in the future here. Can you tell us a little bit about this, before we go into this, the other members who are on the TAC, who expire in '24?
Sure, I don't know that I'd be familiar with all of these individuals or entities, but just going off the first 2024 term ending there, MCCD, so McHenry County Conservation District. Then Baxter and Woodman, who is an active consultant within the county. I believe they are the engineer for a number of municipalities. Been very active, same thing with Hay and Associates, similar idea. The next set, I don't know, Scott, maybe you know a little bit more about Randy Stowe and Dick Hilton. Not too familiar with them.
They've both been very active in the community and on the TAC for many years. I did think that Randy had retired, so I'm not sure that he would be representing that company, but he has a lot of experience in watershed planning in the county. And then we've got MCDOT and the Soil Water Conservation District represented as well. So we would want to make sure that we have continued membership from those organizations. But everybody on there has been long-term members of the TAC. But I don't know, I couldn't speak if they want to continue or not.
So yes, that is my question. Did we know of any who were no longer interested or on this commission? If some of them will actually go on?
I couldn't speak for them.
Because we have amendments, they have amendments.
Right. I was hoping to get through this set that was expiring to then confirm that one, well, I'll be honest, Monday last week, I only had like 3 applications, and so I was getting nervous. Before, and I was thinking about emailing the current TAC members that wouldn't be expiring, but with that, I just focused my energy on trying to reach out and get everybody in. So I wanted to get through this, and then I was planning on reaching out to everybody just to confirm what their status is. So potentially, if we don't get responses from some individuals, then what we can do is I can open it back up and show those as vacant positions, was my thought on that. And considering the amount of applicants that we were having today and some of the other agenda, it just felt like kind of the right spot to kind of cut it off for
So
right
they-
now.
So they could possibly overflow, and there's my, it lies, the answer to my question, thank you. All right, so let's open up the deliberation. And with this number of applicants, it's kind of difficult, because essentially we have to have 7, and we have, 10 there?
11.
Is there 10 or 11?
I thought it was 10.
Oh, okay, I could have miscounted.
I counted 10, but
So we have 3.
Oh, I
I left
counted
Mike off earlier, so.
So I'm gonna go about this backwards a little bit. We have 3 positions that, or 3 that aren't gonna make the cut here. And I apologize, this is a difficult, when you have this many applications, and it's a testament to how we need to really work with this. And I appreciate all of them who came in and put their names forward. So, guys, talk to me a little bit here. You know how I run meetings, I'm a little bit lax sometimes, that I'll let you, I want to hear your input. I want to hear what you're saying, what you're thinking, and that before we make any decisions.
Mr. Chairman?
Well, there's Mr. Reiner.
Sorry, John.
Hey, Sunshine, how are you?
Great, thank you, everyone.
That's just mean.
If it helps, I didn't check the weather over where you're at. Hey, you know, I've got about 30% battery left, and I'm looking, I don't know if my decisions would be made on, you know, the agricultural input. Also, I wouldn't want to forget the municipal input, or also the engineers that work for developers. So I think all these applicants represent, in one or another, all 3 of those players. And I think in the past, the farmers were overlooked and even over bureaucratized. But I think that a diverse group, it looks like is coming in. But if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I could give you my 7 recommendations, just so you know, and based on those reasons, in case my battery dies, you'd at least know what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Okay, here are my yeses. Mike Van Bergen, Al Schmidt, Mike Warner, Jody Manhart.
McCarthy?
Yes, from Manhart.
Okay.
Steve Bicking. Bruce Meyer. And Brian Maliski. And again, you know, with the other 3, I hope to see them again, you know, in the future, or any of these people that didn't make it on, because I'm truly in awe of all the experience that everyone has to offer. But I'll keep it at that, because I am worried a little bit about my battery, and I want to stick around as long as I can.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
All right, so, go ahead.
Just real quick, since John's throwing out names, I did throw it out to the committee. Do you want me to give a little bit of the IEPA and the Army Corps representation? Just to, so the Army Corps contact here that I have, Eric Cecil, I reached out to him. He's really good at, if we're having meetings, he'll meet with me and everything to gauge his interest, because obviously that's something that the committee was asking of these applicants, are you gonna show up? He did not give me, yeah, I'll be there for every meeting type of response. His idea was, well, if the county has something that requires Army Corps input and you give me a heads up, sure, I'll be there, I'll attend the meeting. But I can't, with the amount of coverage that he has, he was non-committal to that. To mirror that with the IEPA, the contact that we had over there with their turnover, we're still looking to find a liaison in their office of where we can bounce questions off. So I don't even have anyone to offer up for the committee to have a representative represent IEPA at this time either. So just throwing that out there in case John wants to give 2 additional names for potentially replacing those 2 positions. If his battery dies, just wanted to get that in there to give John the opportunity if that's something that the committee wanted to consider.
Okay, but I think we have to have a discussion on the Army Corps, whether or not any of, well, see, would be replacing that, correct?
That would be up to you, but with John saying he's got limited power, I didn't want him to potentially not be involved with that, or if you did move forward and you wanted to give his potentially 2 extra names to that, for him to have the opportunity to do so.
John, you want that opportunity?
Yeah, thanks for that opportunity also. That would be Dave Watkins and also Joanna Gledys. She was the alternate. I can't remember the gal's first name. That was here early in the interview process.
Joy, Corona, the first one?
Yeah, Joy. Sorry, I forgot your name. But yeah, Dave Watkins and Joy. And thanks for thinking of that.
Those terms are up in 24, so if they were not participating in the commission, still, I believe is what I'm saying is we could appoint those 2 also, those 2 alternates.
Yeah, it gives
We could
you
appoint
the,
9 instead of 7, but the 2 would do it 24.
right, 2 of them would be, they'd have to come back and reapply at the end of 2024 for 2. It does give you the ability to, because of any vacancies or someone can't do it anymore, whatever the case might be, to appoint someone to replace that number. Earlier, correct.
But not, they wouldn't have to come, they'd have to apply to be reinstated at the end of 24, but they could start immediately.
Correct. That's the idea. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that answered your question. Okay, so we got John's opinion. This is, I think I've been on a couple of committees that we've had this, and it takes a while to weed down through everything. So I want to hear it. Larry.
When he had the list of previous members up there from the, I guess we'll call it expired out in 2022 just because of lack of meetings, et cetera. I think I have it correct that there was 5 that interviewed here that were part of that group. And I think some consideration should be given to them just for the consistency of the group.
All right, so I don't miss any, and your opinion.
Some consideration, I'm not saying that that's the dead thing on it, but
So Corona,
if you're sort of on a balance, I think the consideration for me anyway would go to somebody that was there on that list. And then also the, as Tim pointed out, the Farm Bureau. So if we're saying the Farm Bureau would be Dan Volker's participation and Bruce Meyer, then I think that would be definitely part of what should be part of the group.
so make sure somebody else is writing this down too, so I don't screw this up.
Well, you don't get it too written down because I'm not putting this in stone. I'm just putting
We need Scott here. Scott, Adam, do we have a whiteboard?
I can know. Do you want me to do a Word doc? A Word document, and just type names for you guys?
Adam, you want to write this up here for us?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Presenter. Because that actually is very helpful.
As much as I hate to drag this out, I feel like you almost have to, I will not for obvious reasons be able to vote on any consideration of my conflict.
He's going to lose by 1 vote.
She can question him, but not vote.
All right. Let's start with John. Recommend you for Scott Hartman's job.
All right.
The whiteboard.
Do you need the list up there of the names to start? Then you can do a column with like John and each one of them. You can kind of check and we'll kind of,
Do we go in the order that we interviewed?
yep. Just go down.
On this one. All right, gotcha. All right, so I'll do initials here. Joy Corona. Bergen.
Yeah.
Is there an immediate urgency to do this? Because we have 10 people who are willing to, and it sounds like Stoyan had some issues early on getting applicants. So would it make sense to?
You bring up a really good point.
Right, yes, yeah.
You bring up a really good point, and which I don't know if we have to make this decision today, but we need to make the decision within the next couple of days. Because I'm saying I would not wait till the next meeting to make that decision. I would, as chairman, I would make this decision as soon as Stoyan reached out to everybody and found out where we're at.
I can do that.
Does anybody have an objection to that?
I missed that. What are we considering? Or are you considering?
Okay, what's your name?
Caitlin.
See, I would have butchered that one too.
You did at the last meeting.
I remember it. Worst part about the remembrance in minutes. What Kaylin was asking, or was mentioning is there a need to make this decision absolutely right now, today? And my response is no, and his question for that was, with the list of the 24 candidates that are gonna be up in 24, that maybe some of those are gone already, we don't even know it. That, let's Stoyan reach out to those, find out, and maybe we can fill all 10 of them.
At a different meeting then? At a later
No, I'd be making that decision, right? Because you all agree on that, because Stormwater, I'm looking for your opinions
But we don't know.
of who they are.
But we don't know if they're gonna be there or not, but you're gonna appoint some.
I'm not appointing anyone until he would come back and find who's not on that list for the 24 candidates.
We could have 12 openings.
We could have more than.
So you're not particularly looking for a consensus from us, you're just looking for discussion, and then you're gonna
I'm
make the
looking
appointment at a
looking
later.
for discussion, and I'm looking as a sort of consensus, right? I'm looking for a sort of consensus,
And then you'll make the.
and not lock anything in, and then because of the exact thing. Let's put it this way, guys, and I talk very plainly here, so I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to piss any of you off either, okay?
So then you'd make it an
That if
appointment
I
at
had
a
an
later date?
opportunity to use everybody, we would use them.
So a follow-up question to that is, we have all the applications in front of us. We have Stoyan emailed them to us. So while he reaches out, we can stew on those applications and think about it. If it comes down to, can we provide that input?
You're welcome to send that over to either Stoyan or myself, I think. We don't want to do it on a all of us, because we're going to be violating an open meetings act.
Right.
My concern would be, will the TAC be able to meet in February if we wait on at least filling the 22?
No, they're appointed.
They're appointed.
As soon as I make the final, they're appointed. And I'd love to be able to appoint all 10,
Right, yeah.
okay? So that's why I welcome your opinion. Thank you for bringing that up, because I've been struggling with that part of it.
What we could do is.
So I would only suggest, if I could.
Yeah. John?
I would only suggest if I could we even do that, Mr. Chair, because it's not on the agenda. The agenda was for point 7, wasn't it?
But I could.
Could we change that on the fly?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
It says deliberation.
Because we have to meet 7. Let's pick 7. Well, I'll pick the definite 7, then I just have to be able to tell the other 3 that we're gonna bring you up at the next meeting, right? Wouldn't that work?
That's the way I would work it.
Your call.
To not violate our agenda or open meetings, let's do it that way. Everybody in agreement with that?
Works for me.
And then the next meeting, we'd appoint those officially, those 3. Or whatever, we might have a dozen.
Yeah, I think John's got a good point with it.
Thank you, John, that was a good point.
And then, like I said, at the end of the 24 term, if they're up, then they gotta reapply and go through the process again for the next term. So
Correct.
that makes sense to keep everything in order.
We've talked long enough to give the Adam.
Yeah, I've rewritten this a couple times now.
I know, you got pen markers.
Yeah, I know, I'm making do with what I got. All right.
Is any,
So this is in the order on the agenda, so down, up, down. Okay, just so we have, I didn't do the
Okay.
same order of the interviews, just.
And just put a hash mark for each one that John already went through.
can I ask a quick question? Is anybody allowed to go to the TAC meeting? Like, could the people that we don't, so if they start in February, could the 3 that don't get selected, like, go to that TAC meeting so they don't feel behind, or are you not allowed to go to the TAC meeting? Unless you're appointed.
It's open.
I think it's an open end.
Okay, alright,
Yeah.
that's what I figured, I just wanted to clarify.
And if you're the current chairman of it, right? So they meet and have an election, so you remain as chairman,
Yeah.
unless I didn't pick you.
You already said you're that door closed.
Well, at least we can have you with a little sense of humor. All right. So we got John's up there.
Yep.
Okay,
So,
mark his alternates on the side for you, on another paper.
I just want to make something known here, and maybe I was wrong, but you went off of the agenda in order? Yes, he's deleting it.
So yes, yes.
You corrected it. Okay, just so you had them in the right, because I made a hash mark on mine, so.
Okay, yeah, so, yeah, they start,
Okay.
one, the last.
All right, so John, you got 6 there for John, and who was the 7th one? I marked him.
It was on Oregon.
Mike Warner, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the catch, good catch. All right, go on.
Yep.
Teresa, I'm gonna go to you next.
Okay, so once again, I want to reiterate that I really like all of our applicants, and it's very difficult for me to not say everyone's name, but I'm just gonna do it, I'm just gonna say who I had marked. So I marked Joy Corona. Oh, no, my screen just died. Never mind, go over here. Michael Warner, David Watkins, Stephen Bicking, Darren Olson, Bruce Meyer, and Brian, yeah, BV. You have a BV on there.
There we go. Ryan Alessi.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Dave Watkins is an employee of mine. Is that,
Abstain.
I would think on him, you
So I
might
just-
abstain.
Yeah.
so I just can't,
You couldn't mention him, but you could.
We can't.
You don't have to pick a 7th either.
And you can fix this.
You're not voting.
right, that's just my question, right?
So I'll move down, I'm gonna go right around the board here to members and break down, I'm gonna end with Abby.
Okay.
No pressure.
I already picked, I'm gonna stick with it.
Larry, are you ready?
I think it would skew the board if he's not allowed to vote, if that's what we want.
You're not allowed to vote either on one of
I'm
them.
not allowed to vote, but
I mean, it's a recommendation, it's not a vote.
it's not a vote.
If they have 6, it tells me that that's where they're going.
So,
Fine.
but if you think he should,
Right.
you know. I think he should be able to say his name.
It's
Yeah.
This is,
Right,
that's
so I
right.
should be able to say it, If you right? think somebody
Yeah.
should
Just
be
don't
or
vote.
shouldn't be, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, put your names on there.
Chairman.
Make it easier.
We won't help. Unless you don't want to.
Gotcha. I don't
I would rather that we get some of the other municipalities in before the county board members, all the county board members.
All right, Tim,
Made their,
you're next.
Really?
Are you ready?
I am. Good. Let's see, I got 7. Joy, Mike.
There's 2 mics.
There's 2 mics. Von Bergen?
Hamburgen. And Al. My ad there. Had it. Darren. Steve Picking, Brian Valesky, and Bruce Meyer. That's 7.
Yes. I kept it on, you don't worry.
All right. Chris,
All right, I had Joy Corona, Al Schmidt, Michael Warner, Darren Olson, Stephen Bicking, Brian Valesky, and Bruce Meyer.
Larry,
Okay.
not gonna let you out of it all the way.
No, that's fine, it was mixed up a little bit, so it didn't look like the county board members were completely
okay.
influencing this, is all. And I didn't write my notes very well for doing this part, but I'll start with Bruce Meyer, and that would be my Farm Bureau portion of that situation. And there's one other person that I wanted on there for sure. Got Mike Van Bergen from the boots on the ground comments, that he's the guy out there looking at it and doing it. I sort of like that. And then I had some other ratings here that I already got. Bruce, Brian Valesky, Steve Bicking, Darren Olson, Joy Corona. Am I up to 7?
Got one more.
One more?
Yeah.
Let's see what I got. Did I say Darren Olson? Yeah. Okay. Jody McCarthy.
Okay. I'm not gonna turn around and look at that board until at the end. Okay. Keelan.
I'll make it easy for the marker guy. I had Joy, Mike Dunbergen, Mike Warner, Jody, JM, Darren Olson, Steve Bicking, Bruce.
And then Bruce,
Yes.
Ross.
Joy Corona, Mike Van Bergen, Michael Warner, Jody McCarthy, Stephen Bicking, Brian Valesky, and Bruce Meyer.
Carl, you ready?
Sure. Mr. Van Bergen. Mr. Meyer. Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Warner. Mr. McCarty. Mr. Watkins. And Mr. Ricken. Steve Bicking.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Tracy yet.
Mike Van Bergen as a drainage district member, which I think is pretty important to have representation from the drainage district. Al Schmidt, David Watkins, I was interested in his addressing downstream issues. Darren Olson, Steve Bicking, Brian Valesky, and Bruce Meyer.
Okay, who am I missing? Did I get you, Chris?
You did.
Us too.
I told you you were gonna be last.
Oh, I'm last for sure, okay. I'm not gonna change mine.
Joy Corona, Von Bergen, Michael Warner, Jody McCarthy, Steve Bicking, Brian Valesky, Bruce Meyer.
Bring her home.
I had Mike Van Bergen, Jody McCarthy, David Watkins, Darren Olson, Steve Bicking, Brian Valesky, and Bruce Meyer.
Okay. Before he erases that, so he can have
I see four ties. I see four ties.
That didn't help if I did it.
Because we said we're gonna put that on. But no, that step actually does help that a lot. So there's a couple, we have 11 different counts. There are a couple of 11s on there. Okay. There's some decisions to be made. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Adam, the new Scott.
The new, yeah, I see why Scott likes this.
I think he'll take over his job.
About the last job I would want.
Okay, now, if everybody understands what we're gonna do here, Stoney's gonna send out to the 24 members to make sure that they're all still with us. And that includes their alternates, right?
Yeah, I would be, when I have reached out for the applicants, I included both primary and alternate, just in case one of them isn't there.
So, since they haven't met in over a year, let's make sure it's correct, 2 years. Let's make sure it's correct that we have this before I make that decision. I'd expect you to be able to get that within the next week and a half.
As long as people reply to me.
February 1st, you're up.
But I will do a deadline, so when the deadline passes, I will at least reach out and notify you who has responded, who I haven't heard back from.
When will we have their next meeting? You're gonna get them in February, you said?
Similar, the fourth Thursday is what we were looking at, so that
Are
would.
there any other conflicts with that date?
I don't know, so probably the 22nd leap year looks like, so probably the 22nd there is what we would target.
Okay. I promise, if you can get those answers before that meeting, you guys should all plan on attending that meeting before, but I promise to have an answer before then if it's all 10 of you. If it's just 7 or 8 or 9, I'll make that decision. Well, using the board's recommendations up here.
You already know the IBAN and Army Corps, those two at least have kind of given you that direction of what to expect out of those two entities.
Are we required to have someone from that on the commission?
No. There's no, again, the list of recommendations here, as Larry pointed out, for the categories, again, it says desirable. It does not mean you have to have a person from all of those present. I did, for example, Army Corps is a part of Lake County's TAC, so I did try to take a look how often that representative went over however far I could go back, and I think they had 7 or 6 meetings. That representative only went twice. And some of the stuff on the agenda wasn't even related to wetlands. So I don't know how comfortable, for example, Eric will feel. His territory is 6 counties. You know, is he gonna be giving great input in terms of direction, or is he gonna be more weighing in on the directions that others have kind of, you know, put forth?
Either way, you could refer to his professional knowledge.
So he was open to the idea that, hey, if you guys need me, let me know. I'll come, I'll speak, I'll give a presentation, I'll let you know, if we laid out in front of him saying, here's what we were thinking, he'd have no problem giving us feedback at that point.
As a non-member.
As a non-member, which I feel that would probably, be easier for him as well, with just the amount of, because for his office, they added, I think, 2 additional counties to his area of control. So it's basically, he's my point of contact, and he might be 3 weeks out before I can even get him to come to the county, which is, usually how it works.
No problem, and the IEPA, there's nobody on that one.
We had somebody because of turnover. The person that I would contact, who is kind of the head of the Displays office out there, would not be appropriate. Considering we need an IEPA contact for kind of just to foreshadow what Scott's gonna talk about, we've been actively trying to find a liaison even to commit if we have questions or concerns that we can even contact. We haven't gotten to that step yet either, although we do have someone that we have identified that has been, I would say, communicating with us on some basis. So no, I wouldn't even have a name to throw out there for you guys.
We have reached out to a representative from the IEPA. He's based out of Springfield. So he probably wouldn't be the person, but we are trying to find the right person to be a contact. But it's unlikely that we're gonna have somebody that's gonna commit to a bi-monthly obligation.
But we couldn't fill it with someone else though, right? That's what you're saying?
Well, again, the bylaws.
You say we have to have one.
You can leave those slots as is, and just at the TAC, we probably wouldn't get a representative for IEPA or Army Corps throughout their remaining term. So you're potentially missing out on having 2 more individuals that could provide input. That's my concern, and that's why I brought it up to the committee to consider.
So I'll ask one last question before we move on, and let you guys ask any questions. Does anyone object to appointing, if those 2 positions, does anyone object to appointing number 8 and 9 the next meeting?
I do not. I'm agreeable.
So we bring it forward on the next meeting on the agenda, since it's not on our agenda, as those would be our appointments, and we would not open it up to other interviews, correct?
Well, if I come back and potentially, let's say there's 2 more names that say I can't commit, then I would try to find, however, we have 3 left over. So
we use all 10.
Use all 10. If there is going to be an extra slot, then I would try to reach out and have an applicant come in to have a full member list there.
Because right now I can see it as I'm only being the bad guy to one person or one pair right now. Okay. Anybody else, any of your thoughts before we move on? Forever hold our peace.
I think that's a good way to go. I mean, because once you know who's going to come back out of that, you might not even need to worry about the EPA or the Army Corps. You may find that there's not enough there, and we might be interviewing 1 or 2 more people next meeting, so.
Right. Okay.
And at least with the 10, if there are more openings, if you decide on it, the TAC would have a quorum to be able to meet at least.
One last thought too, I think if you remove the EPA and the Army Corps, that doesn't mean that they can't come and participate in those meetings. Those are open public meetings. They can make public comment. The rest of the TAC committee can hear that and move forward with some of that as well, so.
Great.
They can make that part of the recommendation if they so choose.
Okay, so I'll just tell you what I'm gonna do is I am going to appoint 9 till you get back. I will have 9 in my mind unless something unforeseen happens that they find a couple names on this IEP and Army Corps, which doesn't sound like they will. So I will be appointing 9 of the 10 that you have here. Okay? So that way they can have a quorum on their next meeting. Because out of, what is that, 10, out of that amount, they'd be able to.
You gotta pick 7 though first, right? Because that's on the agenda for today.
I'll pick
before that meeting, so
I'll pick it before that meeting. I'll pick it first.
I don't think there will be concern like McDOT, SWCD. They're gonna show up.
Right.
And I've already, for example, Hay and Associates, Dave Kraft, I've had a conversation with him. So a quorum definitely won't be a concern.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, so let's move on the agenda. 4:13, we're on ratification of TAC membership of McHenry County Department of Transportation, whose term expires December 1st, 24.
So I updated that. Originally, it was Ernest Varga as the alternate and Joyce DeLong as the primary. And for whatever reason, my latest information also showed that they were not ratified at whatever the last meeting was, that it was still outstanding. So I threw it on there just to get them confirmed as being ratified. So,
well, I'm the one that makes that appointment.
Correct.
Right, that's done.
Okay.
Move on, next one. 5.1. I had confusion on that one. What was the,
Okay.
MS4 presentation and update.
Yeah, so that will be, okay, it looks like John maybe left us.
And if any of you folks who interviewed, if you're interested in staying, please do. If you have to go to work or whatever.
I got a wedding to get ready for, so.
All right.
Thank you.
It means you have grandkids in 9 months, you won't be making meetings.
My wife hopes so, I don't.
Gosh, I remember you took a little.
Yeah, I'll just get out of the way.
So, hello, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. Most of you know me, but I'm Scott Kuykendall. I'm the Water Resources Specialist for the McHenry County Department of Planning and Development. I help oversee our scientific research into water, help with public policy, maintain the county's environmental compliance, and do a lot of public education and outreach. So today we're going to be talking about the municipal separate storm sewer system, so 4 S's. So that stands for MS4. So it's a permit program that we work with in McHenry County. So the MS4 is a permit program under the Federal Clean Water Act. And McHenry County, along with most of our municipalities and townships, are required to maintain an MS4 permit with the IEPA. The Clean Water Act was implemented in 1972. And it established the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES. And that's a permit program to protect water quality in the U.S. So bonus points for anybody that can tell me what this is a photo of. Yes, Dennis?
I'm guessing the Cuyahoga.
Yep, so it's a Cuyahoga River that caught fire. This is the fire in 1969. It was sparked from a train going over a railroad trestle. So prior to the Clean Water Act, raw wastewater and toxic waste was dumped freely into our water bodies. And the Cuyahoga River was the most polluted water body in the country. It discharges into Lake Erie, which is the water source for communities throughout the region. It would periodically catch fire. And the fire in 1969 was the impetus for the Clean Water Act and many of our environmental programs today. So prior to the Clean Water Act, people freely discharged toxic materials into our waters. The National Pollutant Discharge and Elimination Program initially focused on pollution from industrial sources or urban wastewater. So we refer to those as point sources of pollution. So it's an end of pipe. So there's a direct pipe connection discharging that material. So either a wastewater treatment plant or an industry. The 1987 reauthorization of the Clean Water Act required stormwater to be considered as part of the NPDES program. We consider stormwater to be non-point source pollution. And some of the worst legacy pollution we have in the region is actually from stormwater contamination. And as a couple of our potential appointees talked about, our stormwater is our drinking water. So all of our private groundwater is using water that's recharged locally, and most of our municipalities are either 100% relying on shallow groundwater or primarily or mostly reliant on groundwater. So our stormwater is our drinking water, so we have a vested interest in McHenry County to really protect our water quality. In 1990, the Phase 1 reauthorization required medium and large cities to get NPDES permits for their stormwater conveyance systems, and that's where the MS4s come into play. And then when 2003, when the Phase 2 kicked in, that required smaller communities to also get MS4 permits. So just to reiterate, the NPDES is a federal program under the Clean Water Act, and it's implemented by the U.S. U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. The MS4 permits are part of the NPDES program, and in Illinois, the NPDES program and MS4 permits are overseen by the Illinois EPA. So what is a municipal separate storm sewer system? They are infrastructure systems designed to capture and transport stormwater and are owned by government entities, designed to use or collect or convey stormwater, including storm drains, pipes, ditches, and not a combined sewer. And this is important distinction. So older cities like Chicago have two different sewer systems, or excuse me, one sewer system. So the sewer system is receiving waste from people's homes, and they're also receiving stormwater. So all that material is treated as wastewater. So that is covered under NPS permit. In newer city or newer communities, and all of our communities in McHenry County are separate storm sewer systems. So one pipe system is handling waste specifically, and that is going to a wastewater treatment plant where it's treated prior to discharge, and that's covered under NPDES permits. In the storm sewer system, that is what's covered under the MS4 permit. So there is a distinction there that's important to understand. And once again, not part of a publicly owned sewage treatment plant. So when we're talking about municipal MS4s, we're talking about sewer inlets, storm sewers, and outfalls that are discharging untreated stormwater into our water bodies. Once again, stormwater goes into our water bodies untreated. When we're talking about the county or townships, we typically don't have sewer systems, but we do have a network of roadside swales, culverts, and outfalls that once again are collecting that water and discharging that water to waters of the U.S. untreated. The MS4 communities are municipalities in quote-unquote urbanized areas. Current definition is populations of 50,000 or more, or population with a population density of 500 people or more per square mile. So most of our municipalities and townships in the county meet this definition. Currently, Marengo, Harvard, and Hebron are communities that don't have permits, but as they continue to grow, they will be pulled into the MS4 program as well. Once again, most of our townships most counties in our region are, and other communities, so like Los Alamos, it has their own MS4 permit. So each MS4 permit holder must develop, implement, and enforce a stormwater management program designed to reduce the discharge of pollutants from their MS4 in order to protect water quality to the maximum extent practicable. To do this, each MS4 program must include best management practices that address these, what are referred to as 6 minimum control measures. And that includes public education and outreach, public involvement and participation, illicit discharge detection and elimination, construction site stormwater runoff, post-construction stormwater management, and pollution prevention, good housekeeping. And I'll talk a little bit about what these are and how the county is addressing these. So the MS4 program is designed to provide flexibility. The issues and the capabilities in Chicago are going to be very different than the issues and capabilities in Huntley. And so there is flexibility involved. Each MS4 community selects the most appropriate practices or activities to meet the minimum control standards. And then each practice has to have measurable metrics that you are committed to meet, and then every year you explain how you met them, and if you're not meeting them, how you are going to correct those deficiencies. So all MS4s must implement public education programs and outreach activities that distribute educational materials to the community, raise awareness about impacts from stormwater to local water bodies, and educate their community about steps they should take to reduce stormwater pollution. So in the county, we have brochures that we hand out both in our office and at all the events that we go to. We participate in a lot of educational events in the county. I do a lot of presentations and I go to lots of events in the county where I have tables set up. These are things that I can also assist communities with. So to meet your MS4 commitments, I can be providing assistance with that. So I can be providing presentations at events that you hold. Crystal Lake has a sustainability committee. Woodstock has an environmental committee. So I can be working with municipalities to help you meet your MS4 commitments. And then we do unique projects also. So one of the cool things that we did a couple years ago is, so I'm the water resources guy for the county. And as I would travel around the county, I'd be crossing water bodies and I would have no idea what water body I'm crossing. So if I don't know, how the heck is anybody else gonna know? So the environmental defenders approached me and asked if we had a project that we'd like to fund. I said, sure, I've got a great project in mind. And so then we worked with the Division of Transportation to create stream signs that go over every single stream crossing on county roads. The defenders got $10,000 for us to do this project, so no cost to the county aside from soft costs. The Division of Transportation sign shop helped design the signs. So each of these signs show what water body you're crossing and then what watershed it goes into. In McHenry County, we have two primary watersheds. The eastern half of the county flows to the Fox River. The western half of the county flows to the Kishwaukee River. So now we have these signs up throughout the county that are the basis for educational and outreach in the future. We have another $10,000 grant that we have now. We're getting ready to work with municipalities to put stream signs up on roads that are under the control of municipalities and townships. So I haven't spoken to you yet. You will be hearing from me. But it's a great project and we can help you with these types of things as well. Oh, and if you do participate in the stream sign program, then you can use that participation to meet your MS4 criteria. And it's not just about talking to people, it's about preventing opportunities for people to be engaged. And so the second minimum control standard requires MS4s to create public participation in involvement programs. And so we, as a county, we hold lots of different types of events, especially our water forum and the development of the Water Resources Action Plan, where the public was heavily involved. Over the past couple of years, I've done programs where I brought River Watch in that's a citizen science program, and they teach people how to monitor water quality by using the organisms that are living in the water. Some organisms are less tolerant to pollution than others, so it's a great indicator of your water quality because the presence or absence are telling you what's actually living there. This past year, we worked with organizations to bring another citizen science program in called Chloride Watch that teaches people how to monitor chloride levels in water bodies. And these are established programs, so the municipalities and others don't need to figure everything out. I can help you coordinate with this, and you can use this as part of your public education and outreach. Volunteer stream cleanups. This is something that I think is actually going to be a requirement in future changes. But most municipalities have streams going through their communities that provide opportunities for stream cleanup. So you're doing good for our water quality, and you're providing opportunities for the public to be involved, and you're meeting your MS4 criteria. And then we have a fairly robust Adopt a Highway program in the county that once again provides opportunities to be involved and to actually make a difference. Waste and trash that is on the ground usually ends up in our water bodies because it'll blow in the wind until it reaches our water. So by preventing the material from actually getting in our water, we're preventing pollution. The third one is illicit discharge detection and elimination. And this is an important one. So it's focusing on preventing pollution in the first place. It's much easier and less costly to prevent pollution than it is to address it. The untreated waste and wastewater from non-stormwater sources are illicit discharges. And they can be mistaken, such as if a truck fuel truck spills, tips over and spills, that's a mistaken discharge to our waters. Or it can be deliberate, and I'll show some examples of deliberate illicit discharges. And all of these can degrade water quality, threaten human health, and damage ecology. So in municipalities, people actually create illegal sewer hookups and drill into our storm sewers and dump raw waste into the storm sewers. People will put stormwater discharges into our systems. They will dump things in our right-of-ways. Household dumping, this is something that I've actually been guilty of. My first car was a 1977 Oldsmobile Cutlass, a big old V8 engine, got about 12 miles to the gallon, and I was taught to change my oil by pulling the car up so that 2 tires were up on the curb, 2 tires were on the road, and your oil pan was directly over the storm sewer. I was told, oh, you don't need to worry about it, it goes through a treatment plant. This is just common sense. I found out pretty quickly that that's not the case. You know, these types of things do occur. And then illegal dumping. I've at least caught 2 companies dumping in Lake County Forest Preserves. The carpet company would do their carpet cleaning and all the nasty water, they would then go to the forest preserve and dump it into a wetland or the right-of-way. So these are things that people need to be watching out for. As part of this, we need to have an effective illicit discharge elimination program, develop a storm sewer map that shows the location of all outfalls and names the receiving waters. We're supposed to effectively prohibit and implement enforcement of non-stormwater discharges through ordinance or regulatory mechanisms, and develop a plan to detect, remove, and document non-stormwater discharges, including illegal dumping. And so dry weather screening is one of the things that all MS4s are supposed to be doing. If you are doing your monitoring in the middle of a drought and you've got flowing water going through your sewer or swale, that is not stormwater. So that is an illicit discharge. And by doing this dry weather screening, you can identify it and then track the source and then eliminate that source. So you need to have programs in place to effectively identify, detect, and eliminate these illicit discharges. And then report that as part of your annual report. And this is something that all staff of our municipalities and county are really supposed to be doing. This is what's expected of us. So as our public works staff or our DOT staff are out doing their day-to-day work, they're supposed to be looking for illicit discharges. And you can do this through odor or visual. So, you know, if you've got uncovered dumpsters, dumpsters really are supposed to be covered. But if it's uncovered, every time it rains, that water is coming into contact with anything in that dumpster. And a lot of times it's really nasty material, and you'll get dumpster juice that gets discharged into our waters. Oil or foam on water bodies, that is not a naturally occurring thing. Discoloration, evidence of dumping. You're not always going to see that Yahoo with his 1977 Oldsmobile Cutlass pulled up on the curb, but you may see the oil residue from that, and so you're looking for evidence of dumping. And then fly dumping is a common problem in our rights-of-way. So all of our staff are supposed to be trained to identify these things and have a robust reporting system to document and correct these things. Number 4 is construction site runoff control, and this is directly tied, in the county, our county at least, it's directly tied to our stormwater management ordinance. When you're doing construction, you've got disturbed ground that is a prime source for erosion, sedimentation, and other types of pollution. And so you need to have an ordinance that requires soil erosion sediment controls that includes sanctions to ensure compliance. Require construction site operators to implement and maintain soil erosion sediment control BMPs, and require construction site operators to control waste. And our stormwater management ordinance is what's referred to as a qualifying program. So this addresses these issues, and municipalities don't have to have their own. They use our stormwater management ordinance as a qualifying program to meet this minimum control standard. And this is just one example. So this is here in McHenry County, and you've got development going up right on a creek. The erosion control was installed. I don't know if it was installed properly, but it certainly wasn't maintained properly. In this case, all of the sediment spilled into the creek. So you've got pollution occurring, you're damaging the ecology. A lot of that sediment's going downstream and causing problems downstream. And in this case, they almost completely closed off the creek. That then creates opportunities to create flooding problems upstream. So this, by simply not maintaining what they were supposed to be doing, they are causing a whole multitude of problems. And this is just one example. And the industry around soil erosion sediment control is very well established at this point. And this is something we need to consider as we consider updates and redoing our master plan or comprehensive plan. One of the things we'd like to consider is improving our soil erosion and sediment control inspections as part of any updates, and I'll talk about that at the end. So the next one is post-construction runoff control, and once again, this is tied directly to our stormwater management ordinance. So this is looking at ways to reduce runoff volume. So when you're paving over a system, water is no longer infiltrating down and recharging our groundwater, as has been discussed. It's now increasing the volume of runoff leaving a site. And so this section is really looking at runoff volume reduction and pollution prevention in the long term. And once again, our stormwater management ordinance is what the county uses to meet this requirement, and it's also the qualifying program that our municipalities use to meet this requirement. And there's a whole, a lot of tools in the toolbox to accomplish this, including infiltration, which then also ties into potential reduction in agricultural conflicts. And then the last one is pollution prevention and good housekeeping. This is really, we need to practice what we preach. So in our operations, we can't be contributing to pollution. We need to have a robust program of pollution prevention and good housekeeping to make sure we're not contributing to pollution. And just some key points. It's focusing on preventing pollution from occurring in the first place rather than having to do cleanup afterwards. So just a case in point, 1 teaspoon of salt contaminates 5 gallons of water. So if you've got uncovered piles of salt, every time it rains or snow melts, that is just gushing chloride into our waterways. In McHenry County, we are real leaders in sensible salting practices, but this is something just to keep in mind that our actions do have impacts. 1 pound of phosphorus can produce 500 pounds of algae. 1 quart of oil can contaminate 250 gallons of water. And like I said before, solid waste debris typically ends up in our water. So by preventing these sources from entering our water in the first place, we're preventing a lot of work that we would otherwise have to do. The potential sources of pollution from our operations include like vehicle and equipment operations, material storage facilities, stormwater collection systems, and practices on maintaining our paved surfaces. We have to provide different documents every year. So the reporting period for the MS4 is from March 1st of 1 year through March 1st of the following year. So our time is coming up here pretty quickly. We have to have an annual report that explains the minimum control measures that we've obligated ourselves to, how we met those obligations, and then if we didn't meet those obligations, how we're going to make those corrections. The stormwater management plan is kind of a big picture. This explains exactly how we meet those minimum control standards. That doesn't change much from year to year, but it does change when the permit program is updated. And then there's an MS4 annual facility inspection report that is signed typically by the village administrator, the county administrator, whoever is ultimately responsible for verifying that that's what's in the paper is actually what's done. The update was supposed to be done a couple of years ago. It got postponed, but it is coming out. So we're expecting the new MS4 program to start rolling out in March of this year. And it is going to have very much more rigorous requirements. I've been working with the IEPA, and at our request, they did provide a list of major changes from the previous program to the new program. I've sent this off to most communities, but I've got hard copies here. I'd really like to make sure that these are getting in the hands of the people that are actually doing the MS4 reporting. A lot of this will look Greek to most people, but the people actually doing the reporting will get much more out of this. But this is advance notice, so this is not like something publicly available. This is something the IEPA put together for us. So I'd really like to help our communities, MS4 communities, get prepared for this. They're going to be looking for much more rigorous requirements for metrics and reporting. They're going to be looking for increased participation from all departments and also increased public education and outreach. Greater emphasis on monitoring of our BMPs. It's one thing to put them in, but we really need to have systems in place to properly monitor and manage them. The changes are likely going to affect staffing and budgets. So one of the main things that jumped out at us is that right now we're required to do annual monitoring of our MS4 systems. It's going to go to quarterly reporting for our MS4 systems. So that alone is going to affect staffing and budgets. So just want to make sure people are prepared in our discussions with the IEPA. It's our understanding that once this is rolled out, we'll have 12 months to get in compliance. Our budgets for 2024 are already fixed, so we don't have the extra staffing to do the quarterly monitoring necessarily, but we have 12 months to get our action order. So it's important for us to start going on this. And then, like I said, our stormwater management ordinance is directly tied to this. So we'd like to update the stormwater management ordinance to address water quality and be consistent with the MS4 program. That'll make things much easier for compliance if they're in coordination with each other. And we'd like to consider creating a designated erosion control inspection program or DECI program, similar to the well-established DECI program in Lake County, to improve soil erosion and sediment control practices in McHenry County. Our feeling is that a DECI program would provide clear standards for committees to follow. Having been in the on the other end of things where I was having to comply with standards, a well-written ordinance helps us communicate both with our partners and the regulators and makes it much easier to get through the system. It improves the reporting process by placing responsibility for reporting on the permittees, thereby allowing regulatory staff to process permits and address issues much more quickly. And then this would also serve as a qualifying program, not just for the county, but municipal and township MS4s as well. So I think this would really simplify compliance and really bring our standards up. And so these are things that we want to have future conversations with you guys about. And then here's our contact information, stormwater questions, direct to Stoyan. And then if you do have MS4 specific questions, please feel free to contact me. We can't do the MS4 permitting for everybody like DuPage County does, but we'd like to be as good of a resource for the other MS4 communities in the county as we can be. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Any questions?
Anybody questions?
Okay, well,
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, I do have hard copies that I'll leave up here. So once again, please grab these and get these to the people working on your MS4 programs. And like I said, please feel free to contact me with any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now we're down to the 5-2, McHenry County Stormwater Management Comprehensive Planning outline.
So with the MS4 changes coming in, I know last time we met, we wanted to kind of focus on updating the comp plan, but because we're gonna have a year starting in March to basically get us up to snuff, that's why we kind of threw the MS4 ahead of that a little bit. But as I kind of go through it, there's a lot of synergies between the two. But in terms of just, again, throwing it out to the committee in terms of SMO changes, the MS4 program, we need to update a little bit sooner. So you all have gotten this. There's kind of one key component to this outline that I'm gonna focus on that's a little bit different. So considering the time we're at, I think that what staff did was we took a look to see what's out there. Again, one of the things that we talked about is we didn't want to reinvent the wheel here too much and see what we had available to us to bring it all together. So kind of the executive summary, the chapter 1, the chapter 2, that's all pretty straightforward. You're basically outlining who's going to be responsible for what and what are your current issues and what does that functional framework look like, who's got an active role, who's got an active interest in this, and then also assessing where the county is currently at when looking at all these different kind of components, whether it be flooding, erosion, something that we've talked about, runoff quality. So all of these things come into play. The big change that we saw, and this was kind of mimicked in all of your discussions with the applicants, is a lot of these plans, they kind of take a overall goal objective. Well, yeah, we want better water quality, and we want better this, and we want better that. With McHenry County, as we've seen, we have very diverse watersheds. What might be appropriate for municipalities on the east side might not be appropriate for rural areas on the west side. So in order to get a better understanding of really where we're at and plan for the future, we were looking at tackling this problem by getting down to a watershed-specific kind of lens, if you will. So it's not going to be overarching McHenry County. It's going to be looking at the west side of the county, seeing that, well, we've got kind of 2, 3, 4 big watersheds that are mostly agricultural, and they're going to have a different set of difficulties, problems, solutions than you would somewhere Algonquin, Crystal Lake, maybe more urbanized areas. And so we felt that we wanted to take this approach because we're going to provide more benefit to the county as a whole. And we felt that it would encourage participation from everyone from a perspective that, hey, we're not just kind of focusing, and it's not just the bigger guys, McHenry, that's getting their voices heard. We are focusing on some of these other areas that maybe have been a little bit more neglected, just from a sense of outreach, organizations, committees, events, those type of components. So that's where we've deviated from kind of the traditional sense of we'd like to move forward with specific watershed planning for this thing to really work. One of the benefits to this is it would also open us up to IEPA grant funding. So that's focused on infrastructure and those type of components. You need to have watershed-specific planning in order for that to work. Crystal Lake is the only municipality or entity in the county that currently has their own watershed-specific plan. We want to get everybody else up to that level, and that would open us up, like I said, again, for more funding opportunities. It would allow us to identify problems specific to those areas and cater solutions specific to those problems instead of kind of an overarching reach across the county. And then also from an action plan's perspective, we're able to put together a better approach for everyone from a phasing, from a funding, from an outreach perspective. These are impacts we want to last. If we call this a 2050 plan, we really want it to be a comprehensive 2050 plan moving forward. And we felt like this really should be an update that probably happens more than, okay, we got the 2050 done, we don't have to worry again until 2050. We wanted it to be kind of a living organism, if you will, where we can spot trends and kind of have early detection systems in place that we can react quicker, we can react better, whether it's to flooding, pollution, whatever it might be. That's kind of the end goal we were thinking, and that's kind of the pitch that we had to all of you, with the ultimate goal of Staff has a series of meetings coming up with different professionals, municipal, private side, based on watershed planning. We're trying to get the full scope together to then basically approach this from a grant opportunity to get everything that we want in order to move forward and get this accomplished. So Jim, I know you wanted to do it in a year, but based on the discussions that we've had here and the diversity, I don't need to spend too much time on that. You guys kind of drove that home for me, but that's kind of where we want to take it to. We do want to look at these areas as individuals, these watersheds having unique characteristics, and looking at them from that perspective. So it's very rough, not very thorough or anything, but that's the big change that I did want to point out is we want to get down to watersheds, and it might be, I don't know, overall we might have 10 or 12 different larger watersheds. We can drill those down a little bit further, or we might feel that, we get to that sort of level and we can group them and say that these 3 or 4 have these issues, these 3 or 4 have those issues. So it's really open, but we feel that that's probably the best approach to take if we're going to put something together that's worthwhile and beneficial for everyone.
Okay, that's it?
That was it. I know we don't have a lot of time, but that was the idea of the outline, was just to, one, give it like some structure so you guys can kind of see the idea. And again, this is completely fluid. But we had put this together first, then kind of the MS4 stuff started hitting hitting us, and we decided that, there's a connection here on working on this, but the MS4 would probably take a little bit of a priority if we want to make any SMO implementations to help us meet some of the new changes that they're asking for in the MS4 permitting, which would benefit the municipalities that need to be involved too, because they automatically use our ordinance, so that those resources would be made available to them as well to take advantage of.
Okay, so next, your tech, when we get these appointments, this is time to really rock and roll on this.
Yeah, that's why the TAC and everything, it needs to go in February, so staff can put this in front of the TAC members and we can start to dissect it and hopefully, make some directional ideas. Here's what we're thinking, to be able to come back to the committee in March. And that would kind of be the first opportunity where we would have something a little bit more concrete in terms of what the changes are going to look like or what we're thinking, so that the committee can decide what you like, what you don't like, where you need more information, etc. That's between the two. That would be the idea. The comp plan, I'm not saying it necessarily has to get put on hold, and we'll continue. Like I said, we've got a series of meetings coming up over the next month with professionals that were involved in one form or the other, whether it's on the contractor side or the municipal side, that have dealt with this, so we can get a better understanding of what it's going to take. That's what we'd like to come back to the committee in March, is a little bit more on the watershed planning. But we're hoping that when we do get all our ducks in a row, we'd have a good understanding, we'd know the dollar amount, at which point we'd go for grant funding. We were already in that process for the comp plan update that was started previously, but that grant, it was very basic. It didn't have these type of details or kind of kinks worked out. So we decided, in my conversations with IEMA, Emergency Management Association, that would handle, they're kind of our liaison to grant funding from FEMA. That individual basically told me, well, if you guys are doing a comp plan, there's a high likelihood that you're probably going to get the money. So one thing that Dave Christensen mentioned to us is if you're gonna go for grant, get it all. If you're gonna come back again, they're gonna look at it and say, you guys already got some money over here. I don't know that we wanna give you money again. So with all of that information and kind of how this transformed, we pumped the brakes on that grant to have an opportunity to potentially get all of this in there and get the funding for it.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? Okay. We will move on then. Member comments or future discussions? Any member comments? Okay. Future topics. I think we kind of have our list of future topics before us with your last presentation. And so I thank everyone for coming today. I have to say this is probably one of the best, longest meeting Stormwater has had. And so I think we're gonna rock and roll this year, I really do. That's my anticipation, that we can really get down and get something done here in this next 12 months. So, and I appreciate it all. So with that, I will entertain motion to adjourn. Mr. Kaminsky. I'll give a municipality, Chris Knight, seconds, and all those in favor, aye.
Aye.